All right, hey, welcome to Neovim Conf. What is this, the fifth conf?
Yeah.
This is number 5. This is number 5.
Hey, ABD, come over here and say hi.
Yeah, ABD, you got to come over here.
We are very excited. We got a great line of guests today. Unfortunately, neither of us have to talk very much. Instead, we've gathered the best talks that we can find out on the internet.
The best. There's none better.
Talks like this before.
Yeah.
I've never seen talks like this before. Actually, they're gonna think it's so crazy.
And he's currently
Adam
playing a video. Adam is currently playing a video.
And it's Burrito with Smile Command. Spoilers, dude. Spoilers.
It's still playing.
No, it's not.
No.
Okay, we're back. We are so back.
Spoilers. Sorry,
Pre-watch.
spoilers. Anyways, we have 2 cool things to talk about, which are shout out to our sponsors today, Twitch.
Sponsors, yep, Twitch.
And Vercel. Vercel made a nice, generous donation to Neovim in honor of Neovim Conf, so thank you for them. And we'll hear a little bit more from Twitch later today.
Yeah.
Probably not from me.
All right, well, we should let Adam, we should not let Adam do anything. Adam, just don't do anything for a little bit.
Yep.
Yeah.
But we'll let you take over. If you talk towards the mic, it's the best. And
we can also point it out.
yeah, we can also bring it a little bit
closer.
closer.
Can I also say one thing about Justin's intro, since we got distracted by Adam?
I know, Adam, sorry. It was so genuine.
Justin was one of the people who reviewed my very first PR on Neovim and has helped me grow a lot as a software engineer, so I'm very excited to have him here with us today. And he's done a lot to shape the vision of Neovim. So, without further ado...
I think I also have something.
Oh, yeah, I'd love that.
Historically, at all the Neovim conferences that I've personally been to, which is all of them... Justin, you've had fantastic presentations. I always look forward to the State of Neovim presentations. They're like my most favorite, so
all right.
I'm very excited. Let's do this.
Let's send it over to Justin and show his screen.
Send it over to Justin.
Show his screen.
That's very encouraging. Thank you.
By the way, do you want chat up? Do you want this, or do you want me to hide it so it's not distracting? Yeah.
I am good at reviewing PRs. I've done a lot of those. Even though I hate reviewing PRs, actually, that's the thing I hate the most. But I do it that's almost all that I do. Thank you all for coming. This is really cool. I'm going to present the state of the Neovim project, like I do most years. The theme of this talk this year is the Giants have no timeouts. And this is a pseudo-intellectual kind of metaphor that I grabbed from a very large doorman in a black trench coat. He was reporting gravely into his phone with some ambiguity. I couldn't tell if it was trepidation or anticipation. He said the Giants have no timeouts, and I just kind of lingered on the imagery at first, but I wasn't looking at my phone, so then my mind wandered, and I decided that this is some sort of symbolism. Hemingway be damned. He's giving us a memo. He's telling us that we need to move fast. What will you get out of this talk? I'm going to give backstory, motivation, current status, and plans. This is the usual structure of these talks, and I try to delete as much as I can, but the context in 5 years. In 2019, that was 5 years after the start of the project, and it was kind of I was still mostly hyper focused on making the case for the why did we fork Vim, and why is Vim even worth forking? And I think 5 years later now that question is fully answered. But in 2024 now, there's a different question, which is if you put Neovim beside other projects like VS Code and interesting projects like Zed. This is something we kind of just ignored before because we occupied the more narrow bubble of we just want to be the best Vim-like text editor, the best modal text editor, and we'll just focus on that. But we did that now, and so that's kind of boring. And so there's potentially a lot to discover if we now like change our frame of reference to stuff that's more ambitious. Even if we decide that these are directions that we don't want to go down, being more ambitious will at least inspire you to probe those directions, and you can always back out and decide against them later, but you should at least probe them. This is quite different than like maybe Emacs from what I've read on their mailing lists over the years. And continuing this subject, the positioning of Neovim in 2019, it was in this lineage of Vi derivatives. Ed was this really basic interface, and then VI came along and added normal mode. Vim added a scripting element and text objects, and Neovim is an obsession with exploding in both directions of flexibility, like the ability to put Neovim in as many contexts as possible, as like the host, as a capybara in a host, and also then from the other direction being able to extend Neovim. But beyond that 2019 framing, now we also we have a really impressive org, excellent people, and so that's something that is a different. It's an extra feature compared to what we were thinking about 5 years ago. I also am thinking a lot about the relevance of Vim or Neovim in the next 5 to 10 years. In 10 years, probably brain-computer interfaces will be not uncommon, and keyboards are going to be more of a fallback input method. So this is kind of interesting to think about, even not only for Vim and Neovim, but Zed and VS Code and other types of development tools. If we only think about keyboard interfaces, maybe that's over optimizing. Maybe that's like a local optimum. And also, if we think about non-keyboard interfaces, where does that lead us? And does it give us optionality? So one way of thinking about that is macros and programmability, a structured interface. I'll talk about this more later, but these kind of things likely would continue to be relevant for at least the first couple generations of brain-computer interfaces, even if like the literal keys on a keyboard are no longer relevant. Also, modes. Modes is very funny because when I was building this presentation, and I was reading the Zed issue tracker and the VS Code issue tracker, I realized that it's weird that they don't have modal text editing built in from their initial architecture, because this is clearly an option that will be needed for, as for example, navigating an AST and brain-computer interfaces. Let's just, even though that's kind of just like vaporware right now, but modes will obviously be a necessary primitive in a brain-computer interface. And also with brain-computer interfaces, like buttons and menus are going to be even more outdated than keyboard-driven interfaces. I just thought of that. And the other part of Vim, which I called out as the Vim way in 2019, which I think is super powerful, super relevant for the next 10 years, is the ad hoc use case. And still also VS Code is not yet investing a lot in this use case. And maybe they never will. I mean, they have like an issue that's tracking basic macro support, so that's kind of a hint in that direction. But, it's kind of funny to imagine just, I don't know, a Microsoft product manager trying to make the case that you need to support people who want to write mappings, like throwaway mappings to do something just briefly on a text document, or just kind of like building this story and then making the case and trying to get funded for it. It's actually hilarious to think about that happening at Microsoft. So that's the backstory. And now let's talk about the motivations for working on Neovim. Why? My speaker certified friend Vikash asked me an innocent question, which is the ultimate nerd snipe for me, and that is, why do you use Neovim? What's good about it? And it's, the cop-out answer is to say, well, because I like it. And that's like what a GNU person would do, or, some people often give this answer. It's weak, it's limp, it's circular. And then on the other hand, if the answers that I come up with is this, it looks like this list: minimalism, a text UI, I'll defend text UIs later, control, I'm a control freak, probably many of you are. I don't, for better or worse. You might also have commitment anxiety like I do. You don't want to commit too much to something that a rug that could later be pulled out from under you. Optionality, flexibility, that's a big one. Ecosystem, which essentially is like a synonym for legacy and inertia, whether you realize it or not. When you find answers on Stack Overflow, that's inertia that's helping you out. When you find a plugin that does something you want, that's inertia. That's legacy that's helping you out. There's this kind of history and population and ubiquity that then turns into this kind of accidental property of the universe that's just conveniently solving your problems for you because it happens to be popular. This is basically, you can call this an ecosystem. And then, of course, personally for me, excellent people is a reason to work on the project. But Nassim Taleb, one of my an author that I like, he's fond of pointing out that if you have more than one answer for something, then you actually don't have a good answer. If you have a good reason for doing something, a really good reason, you usually just have one answer. It's just one answer. And so I'll just ask you to consider beauty as the singular answer, but then I'm going to twist it into what I think is beautiful, which is leverage. I think leverage is beautiful, and if you're a programmer, then you also think that leverage is beautiful, because most of your mind time, your mind minutes are spent thinking about how you can control a fleet of things instead of just doing one thing. When you click a button in a menu, you've done one thing. If you can automate that and never have to click the button again, then you have leverage, and you're casting spells in a way. And this is beautiful. And there's other forms of beauty that at least they're beautiful to me. And one of them is, like when Bjorn removes the libmessage and replaces it with libmpack, that to me is beautiful, because it's if you're getting closer to the essence of a thing. And when Matthias and Lewis, they've been thinking for weeks or months, kind of like passively, about the best interfaces and patterns for the LSP client, and then they come up with and they write down a narrative and a plan and a design, and it fits. It finally fits after we've been kind of having tumbleweed discussions about this for a year or two, but then when that falls into place, that's beautiful. And minimalism is also beautiful. And meanwhile, if you suspect that something is beautiful, if you just have like that tip of the tongue phenomenon, if you just kind of have a gut feeling, you can't always necessarily explain it, but you suspect that something is around the corner, that's a motivation for what Alan Kay calls inverse vandalism, what Dijkstra says is our business beauty. You should just do it, especially if you do think things are just around the corner and you want to see how they unfold. And I love just thinking about like all these kind of like frivolous things that I've observed over the last 2 decades, and then they turned into marvelous things. Like they started out as frivolous, and they have their deriders and their detractors, but they're also super popular. That's a key. That's the extra kind of like hint that something is that reality is kind of signaling to you that there's something there. If it's super popular and you have a gut feeling about it, then there might be something there. And video games, video games were just these things that kind of like abused every part of the hardware to get something working, but they were popular. People wanted them. They gave their money to them, and this turned into a GPU, and then the GPUs are now building AIs. That's such a beautiful kind of like serendipitous accident. Except it's not an accident if you consider that if you consider this framework as actually giving you information, where you follow stuff because it's interesting, you don't quite know why, but it's super popular. Then it's hard to. You might not even call it accidental, because of course this happens when those conditions are present. Then of course surprising and good things happen, and it's not an accident. And this is the case with Neovim, definitely. Text UIs also are seeing a resurgence. Tons of people love them. I couldn't give you an exact description of why. On the optionality topic, yeah, similar to that suspicion about things that are around the corner, we don't need to guess the future. We just need to be flexible in a high leverage way where we're not doing everything, we're not boiling the ocean, but we are allowing the ocean to passively flow into a nuclear reactor, so then it just happens to boil, or into a volcano, yeah, maybe. And so then it boils itself. And we didn't do much except we just kind of dug some sort of tunnel or something. And so the way that we are doing that is that we have, like, I would say, like 5 parallel kind of ongoing concerns that we maintain without like overextending ourselves, and the hosted model is a key part of this, and a great way to think about this, instead of as a parasite. When Neovim is hosted in the Chrome browser or VS Code, it's not a parasite. It's just it's a cuddly capybara that is riding a much bigger and more vicious and powerful thing in a harmless way. There's also a suspicion that like computer scientists sometimes try to, they've written essays on, they give us hints in the form of pithy quotes, but like when things get really big, then they tend to eventually grind to a halt. And this relatively could mean lower optionality. If you play Magic the Gathering, then you know this card is a relatively high mana cost, and it's a creature that is pretty powerful. It's big, but it doesn't have any optionality. It just can basically it's just it does only one thing. It tries to attack. Whereas this card has high optionality. It's a manageable mana cost, and depending on the situation that you're in, you can combine different parts of it. The computer science-y concept of the expression problem is a way of thinking about this. Neovim chooses power. Emacs also chooses power. These editors that allow you to mercilessly extend stuff, and where you can stub your own toe by doing maybe too much or overextending it, they're giving you power. But on the other hand, the counterpart to this, which is our role as maintainers of Neovim, is to look for things that can become properties. And when you lift things into the architecture, or you lift things into patterns, then they're more like properties, and you can kind of balance between this duality. So yeah, this is what this looks like in my mind. We are the Spaceballs, gargantuan Star Destroyer sucking things up and lifting them into our architecture with our vacuum. Our organization is a vacuum. I hinted earlier that the new context of 2024 is to take kind of like sober assessment of what we do right, what we do wrong, what our advantages are compared to other projects, instead of just glibly staying in our bubble and declaring that our scope is final. It's instructive, at least as a benchmark, to think about, well, what if we expanded that scope or reshaped it? Like, could we actually do a relatively small amount of work to get to these other places? So that requires comparing ourselves to other high quality projects. And right now, the only projects that really are even on my mind are VS Code and Zed. I don't think about Helix or Eclipse or Visual Studio or IntelliJ. I think they are, for varying reasons, kind of VS Code has, the good thing about VS Code is its architecture. The things that its architects took away from Eclipse is that the plugins are isolated from the main thread, and they're very aggressive about performance monitoring and kind of making sure that the plugins can never fully bork the experience for the user. This is similar to remote plugins in Neovim, but remote plugins in Neovim are not really the main mode of plugins. VS Code also has a UI protocol. VS Code does not have a text UI. It doesn't have modes yet. It's kind of, it doesn't have a high priority on the ad hoc use case, and it doesn't really have core support for macros that allow you to do window management and all these, other things. And another weakness or maybe cost of VS Code as a project is that it just is really focused on telemetry. Neovim is popular, even though we never hired any data science witch doctors to tell us, like, what do the users want. Actually, it turns out you can get a pretty good signal about that from the issue tracker, social media, and also your own intuition. And so you can cut out that whole like 20 to 30% business cost, and also the context switching cognitive cost of just constantly obsessing over sending megabytes of data from your users to your telemetry service, and then having a team of MBAs tell you how to interpret it, and telling you also that they still need more metrics. They don't have enough metrics. Zed is they made the choice of designing their architecture around CRDTs, which could potentially be a very good design decision, especially if they can, unlike the XI editor, if they can figure out how to layer over this in a way that doesn't require plugin authors to be constantly conscious of it, then that could be very useful. And it's kind of something that we need, at least in a crude way, to support multi-cursor in Neovim. And Zed is also working on what they call Vim macros. I don't know how expansive or comprehensive those are, but Zed, I don't think, is targeting text UI, and it also lacks modes, I believe. And it doesn't yet support like large parts of the ad hoc use case. And it has a 20-minute build time. That's unfortunate. And then we already talked about brain-computer interfaces. So I won't mention that again. And I'll just note also that AI is kind of irrelevant when thinking about the directions that a text editor or an IDE or a developer tool needs to go with respect to the value that AI is delivering. AI is a feature. It's not a product. This is a hilarious kind of misunderstanding that the Cursor IDE is currently like they're doing, you know, good business, and they've created a good interface, but eventually that's going to be commoditized by VS Code, and eventually it'll find its way, hopefully, into Neovim if we set things up in the way that we should. And that's our job, is to see what the gaps are, and so we can help either third-party extensions give the kind of context that is needed to AI extensions, or possibly build in, you know, some primitives into our standard library if it comes to that for that. But yeah, so when thinking about, like, you know, the architecture, at least, and the positioning of a text editor, AI is just irrelevant. It's a feature. It's not. It doesn't require like deep thinking about your projects. Goals, yeah. It doesn't require deep thinking about your project's goals. And then a quick note about like other potential like branches in the timeline. What if text editing or modal text editing is delivered as a library, which then makes it essentially a primitive that can be integrated into projects? Well, then we can consume that and see what's left. And then, yeah, and then I haven't really thought a lot about that, but that's one way things could go. If it doesn't become a primitive, then another direction is that actually Neovim becomes a primitive, especially if we get really stable and somehow and finally deliver like a C ABI that's consumable by other projects, and a WASM artifact, then Neovim could become the primitive for modal text editing, and just text editing it in general, especially as our Unicode support is getting excellent thanks to Bjorn. Yeah, this is kind of just some blathering about, I was trying to form like a picture of what the ad hoc use case, part of that story is that you need interactive commands, and any project that doesn't start out with this ends up adding it in some kind of limp form later on. You can see this in like Discord or Slack. or they had the slash commands. So eventually, every project needs this eventually. VS Code has the command palette, and that works well because they really have made the fuzzy finding experience snappy, and so it doesn't feel too bad to keep just like running one command at a time, but it doesn't take arguments, and it doesn't have its own kind of language, which matters for that language matters for when you're sharing stuff. Like, you don't want to be describing like run this command, open the command palette, click this button. You want some sort of language. Yeah, let's go on. So, expanding on the list of why reasons that we enter this section with. Who cares about extensibility? This is a funny question because, number one, like, we're programmers, and number two, if you don't have an extensible tool, then it's more like kind of just shopping, and it's not developing. And it's very, very strange that the operating system doesn't already provide all this stuff, which is the reason that we have to do this. Like, Apple had AppleScript or whatever it was called, Automator, but that's kind of languished, and it's slow, and it doesn't serve all the use cases that we're addressing here. So this question is, or the answer is self-evident. You should be able to automate things, and that is what extensibility is. And it's the same kind of basic reason that Raspberry Pi is a thing and Linux is a thing. They're super flexible units of extensibility that then found their way into many applications. Who cares about minimalism? I think when Prime interviewed Casey Martori a while ago, he made the point that ARM is more amenable potentially to optimizations because it has a fixed length instruction set. So that's just like a classic example of how constraints, minimalism is the Emacs model where they do everything themselves. Like, that's kind of the opposite of the hosted model. They're doing everything themselves. They host their code themselves. Their primary support is only for their operating system that they favor, things like that. And then also to contribute, there's friction to the contribution model there, not to mention the whole the culture itself. But in the model that I want to try is where you're only focused on delivering an open source text editor, and you just hosted as this capybara on all these other kind of like fashionable things that could disappear, and then you move on to the next alligator after that. GitHub is a great alligator to ride right now. Maybe it goes away, and then we just move on. Same thing with Twitter or whatever. Like, Twitter is useful right now. If it really does blow up or whatever, then we can move on, because we're a capybara. But it's doing something useful right now. So, but now the central thesis is, for me, what motivates me is just that we have excellent people, and we're on the cusp of like 5 different things that I want to see how they turn out. Okay, so the status. Let's talk about the current health of the project. You can build from source in 57 seconds. That includes downloading dependencies. Wow. And we know from Justin's law, thing that I just made up, that the definition of a text editor, or the thing that you are building is not a text editor if it takes more than 5 minutes to build. If it takes less than 5 minutes to build, it might be a text editor. That's Justin's law. And this is just like, this is the front door to all kinds of this is a downstream, like everything else is downstream. If you start with a slow build, then after that it's just like slowness and slowness and slowness on top of slowness. It needs to be fast. Everything needs to be fast. Because that is the central part of your development cycle. If that's slow, then your developers are unhappy and they're slow, and everything cascades from that into just slowness. We have doubled the number of GitHub downloads since last year. That's some sort of signal. It could even be from bots or whatever. It doesn't matter. But guess what? We have twice as many bots as we did last year downloading from GitHub. And on Homebrew, for the first year ever, we have more downloads or installs than Vim itself. That is crazy. That's crazy. And for the fourth year in a row, we were most loved on Stack Overflow, whatever that means. We have no idea, but we're winning it every year, and so it's very important until we stop winning it. And on Reddit, yeah, like these are other signals that this is pretty much all the signal that you need. You don't need telemetry. Someone called me in 1 year when I gave this talk, they called me like a fake statistician or something. This is not statistics. These are just signals. And this is all you need. You don't need telemetry. You don't need to do a regression analysis or a cohort analysis to figure out that, like, directionally, like where things are going and which things are liked and which things are not liked. So the vibe is just now, there's lots of users, and so that's why this year, for the first time, we are looking at competition, just to see what it tells us, just to discover stuff. It's not like, we're just an open source project. Ultimately, it doesn't matter. We're just trying to learn and develop a good text editor until someone else does it for us. It would be much easier, actually, if someone else did it for me. Our neopopes, these are the people that I know of that are doing really interesting stuff in the plugin world. And Matthias in particular is a very clear thinker. I like that. It's very useful and valuable. And Echanowski and Volky and the Envy Chad guy, they're showing us what's possible. They're like teasing the limits. And currently, this is the place I recommend for finding plugins, if any place. And hopefully next year, this will be driven by some sort of package format, official Neovim package format, hopefully. A note about funding. All donations go to development work. That's it. I love saying that. It's so simple. I don't like having little like footnotes. All donations go to development work. That's it. And what this means is that someone is focusing full-time on Neovim. It's different than like nights and weekends. We have lots of people working nights and weekends, but it's nice to have the option of just focusing for weeks or months on only Neovim. No showers or sleep or anything else. And this year, these are some of the things it yielded. Bjorn has done very impressive work, which I think maybe he'll talk about in another talk later, if I ever end this talk. And FAMU is really delivering on the stuff that we had hoped for, the options subsystem. This is a big deal because this kind of deletes this really annoying continual question about like where do you put options for major modules such as tree sitter or LSP. It's really annoying that you have to invent these inner platforms for each module where it has its own little quirky option subsystem. No, we should just use the editor options for that. And maybe eventually, I don't think this is part of FAMU's work, but maybe eventually we would have plugin defined options, because at the end of the day, like the behavior of the options is just like, it is what it is. People understand it. It's relatively well documented. So it kind of makes sense to just have maybe like some sort of namespace or something where plugins could also just hook into that. Maybe. And yeah, and then Luke is working on the messages grid. This is a big deal. And he's really noticing some like kind of tricky issues and fixing them. So we are maintaining stuff. We are theory building. We are engineering. And here's a brief overview of what we shipped. In 0.9, I just want to mention again that the XRC feature, which is really cool. It's one of those like high leverage, like small changes that opens a lot of possibilities. And then in 0.10, which we shipped in May, all this stuff. Yeah, one thing I can just demo here. Look at this range Lua. This is the kind of thing that we want. I just highlight this and I type Lua and it runs it. This makes the program alive. We want the program to be alive. We want that REPL feeling. And like lots of improvements to the TUI capabilities, thanks to Gregory Anders. And yeah, we just have excellent people thinking about things and coming up with good solutions. This is not a waterfall of drive-by, half-baked kind of features that are just turning into a mess. That's the main thing that I care about, that indicates to me that the project is on the right track. And the stuff that's in head right now, we're playing around with. So we delivered this with concept, which it's kind of like a save and restore of just like all kinds of context. This is something. The thing that's significant about this is that this is an example of how we're just kind of like figuring out how to ship things faster without agonizing totally over the public interface. So we did that. This is like internal only right now, but it's a first step to exercising it and not having it just sit in a stale PR until we just discuss it to death. Yeah. And so like 1 or 2 years ago, we delivered the remote TUI. And now soon what will land is that you can just hit Control-Z and detach your UI from any Neovim session. This will just happen. This is built in. You don't have to do anything at all. Control-Z, detach. And this eliminates tmux, actually, for me. I have been a long time tmux user, but if I'm not worried about losing an editing session or something, then I don't really need it. And also, yeah, the other reason I don't need it is because things like Kitty and Ghost TTY are kind of aggressively expanding the capabilities of a terminal, and tmux kind of just gets in the way of that. So things that are around the corner is that we are maturing LSP config, and this means that next year, definitely, if not maybe, I don't know, some other time soon, I will just demo building Neovim in 57 seconds and getting an LSP thing to run with like 2 lines of code on a stock vanilla Ubuntu system or whatever. Huge amounts of work in performance, really improved paste handling. This matters a lot because paste is historically a pretty painful story in Vim, in terminals in general. And we did a lot of work on defaults. So we are really thinking about the user experience stuff. But I think that we should really hammer on that in 2025. We should hammer on the user experience stuff. But before I get to that, I'll also talk about how good we have gotten at writing things down. And this means that, you know, like, instead of just having these tumbleweed discussions that kind of like resurrect in our chat rooms every now and then, but we never like write anything down. We're doing this a lot, and like I don't know of any tumbleweed discussions that haven't been written down at this point. So we're getting good at this, and it's leading to people understanding what they need to do next, and then actually doing that. Like Gregory Anders, you know, he wrote down these 2 narratives, and it resulted in some really good work. Like it completed the interface for OpenWin so that it works with all kinds of windows instead of only floating windows. And then this other narrative resulted in the maturation of these UTF index functions, which are core, need to be performant, need to support different encodings, and they are a core part of, you know, LSP handling. They're very important for that. So it was great. And someone who wasn't a previously contributor then took this up and delivered it very nicely. And also the tree-centered distribution story has been hard to like gather all the different parts of, and Christian has really been doing good work there, connecting people and pointing things out. And so when I say excellent people, this is like, this can be thought of, I present this as in next to this never-ending slop about AI taking the jobs or whatever. But like, I hope they do, but I don't think they will. And meanwhile, we have really excellent people thinking about our system, and this is something that isn't going to happen anytime soon with AI, because there is so much implicit knowledge that isn't expressed as language, and so the AI can't even learn from it, at least until it gains like a theory of mind and like many more inputs. And So some examples of this theory building results are here, like the work that Bjorn did that I mentioned earlier, performance work, Lewis doing an overhaul on the documentation generation system that is massively valuable. And it also had this serendipitous benefit of now we have like a useful LPEG based documentation parser, and it also parses C doc strings and Lua doc strings. And that means that now all this corpus of code and documentation that we have is now also data. It's now also structured data, which means plugins can make use of this. And we can ship this as a core feature. And it will also help our validation and our automation. So here's an example of something NVChad did. This is really cool. This is literally just a text UI. Okay. Let's see. Risks, lingering problems. We still have no, like, anyone that really just is working on Windows as their primary operating system. We probably have too high of a novelty budget. We're doing too many things at once that are not like yeah, and then concept creep. Yeah, does anyone know the difference between all of these things? Text marks, buffer annotations, decorations, and highlight attributes. Where are we going? So I'm how much time do I have? There's no commercial or whatever.
Once you're good.
Oh, okay.
Playing actually.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we're at the end here now. So the positioning of Neovim is these multiple parallel tracks, because this is the optionality approach. It's high leverage. It doesn't mean that we're going in different directions. It means that we have answers to many parallel sort of directions. Parallel use cases. We want to be a group of excellent people with that have theories about this system. We want to be something that is small enough that any hacker can just take the code base and pull it down, and if they want to, just change something in core, if it comes down to that. That's different than a project like VS Code, where it's kind of like, it's more focused on scaling horizontally, where it's just like, it's doing all the stuff, but it's kind of like Cloud versus Hetzner. Like the Cloud is really good at scaling horizontally, but at some point you kind of have to declare bankruptcy for many use cases, like DHH pointed out, where actually you don't actually need the cloud, and it's actually just 10 times or 100 times more expensive than what you need for this whole cohort of like useful things that you can do. And so I guess these are the main approaches. And yeah, so I already talked about this, but VS Code is ultimately, they need to decide what to fund. That's very different than an open source project where we only fund things if we get excellent people to work on them. That's the inverse of what you get at a corporation, where it's like, I hope we hired people that are good enough to work on this thing that we got funded to do. Quite different. They're both valid models, but they both have a place, I guess. So, and then these are things that are out of scope. We're not going to do a layout engine. Cursor is a feature, not a product. And we're probably not going to have a component library. It's good that people are doing that, but and we will have like, we will continue to build out vim.ui for like interfaces, but not for laying out like forms, like building forms and stuff like that. That's different than just like, say, a prompt or whatever. And my proposals for next year, the things that I really, really, really want to solve next year is press enter needs to go away. Press enter is evil. It's an accident, and it's also the reason that people think other projects are more stable. When errors, when exceptions get thrown in VS Code does not like send you an email and like print out a fax or whatever. It just logs it. That's what we should do. We might, maybe show like a little indicator or something in the bottom right corner, but we do not need to be asking for confirmation about this. Like if a plugin fails, then a plugin fails. Like, and yeah, and so Luke's work on this is definitely going to help with this. It may even solve it. And if his work doesn't fully solve it, then we'll find some other way to add a mode that at least stops the bleeding for now. And this doesn't necessarily mean that next year we're going to have like a full sort of message routing story. Other things that, again, are just kind of like these obvious or why didn't I think of that or whatever, like things that we should do. Some of these things are like stuff that we really should have done a while ago, but we just kind of were more focused on the super core technical aspects. But this is stuff that is easy, relatively easy to do, that we should just do. It just makes the editor a complete answer, a complete application. Like when you drag stuff into it, it should do something useful with that. When you paste images and URLs, it should do something useful. And when we open big files, we should fall back to some like fast mode. We should not just, we should do like something at least that's just dumb and effective there. And there's plugins that do stuff. We could start with that. Hopefully we'll also get to auto read. This is difficult, but Lua profiling is obviously something that we need. So hopefully we'll have a basic answer there, because then that kind of like it unlocks, it helps troubleshooting and all these other things, and it helps the extension developers. Yeah. Also, visual first operations. If we get into Google Summer of Code, then this is pretty much what I hope someone will work on, if not somebody else. But like, this is basic. We could easily do this. There's no reason that Vim doesn't have this. Except just historical accident. Like, you get the keys, you have something visually selected, and then you type some keys. Those should be semantically, those should be repeated. Those keys should be repeated. The visual, no one cares about the visual selection, the exact dimensions of the visual selection that you did. Why does it repeat that? Doesn't make any sense. And also, yeah, I have unfinished business with multi-cursors, so that's going to be my hill to die on in the next 12 months. So, you know, I might die, but or I might deliver multi-cursor. These other things are more aspirational, except for presentation mode. We should have presentation mode. I can't believe this isn't a thing. I propose maybe Z tab or backspace as the keys, but like we have this kind of weird, we're in this weird spot where it's like when you open a markdown file, we have to decide, do we want to do conceal? Do we want to highlight headings really nicely? Or do we just want to give people the raw view? Well, just the raw view is fine, but then there should also be an easy way to toggle on and off a presentation mode for all kinds of different formats, maybe even help docs and I don't know what else, but at least Markdown. Like Markdown is the JSON of the docs world. It's water, it's everywhere. You need to support it, otherwise you're not paying attention. And an image API, I've demonstrated my hacky attempt at making that work. It worked okay. It's got some rough edges, but I think we can deliver a basic image API, and we need to get that started in 2025. And then also, the async story might actually start to become realistic next year, because we have at least two good proposals that are very thoughtful and fully formed. Probably everything I said is probably going to take up a lot of my time, but maybe I do think that we should get around to trying out this package format and seeing what happens with it. It's a low cost thing to try out. There's like 5% remaining to do on the spec that I just need to finish, and then we can see where that goes. And the reason that matters is because like this is kind of something that we just don't have an answer for, and when you put us against like something like VS Code or whatever, they do have an answer for it, and so it raises the question, why don't we have an answer for it? If we can do something that's low cost, we should try it. And that's related also to this built-in plugin manager thing. At the very least, this will make bug reports slightly easier, although Kickstart does a good job of that. But also, there's that last mile story where it's similar with LSP config. Like LSP config gives people what they need to do, but even that is like, it's not a great experience, especially for people who are just getting started. And if we can improve that last mile experience without like throwing away something that is good for the normal users, then you should do it. But it's a gap that we missed because we don't identify that much with the new users. But if you can just install Neovim, run a one-liner, and get stuff working, then that's much different than like half a page of instructions or a full page of instructions. Remote plugins v2 is also, this is related to the AI having an answer to AI. AI is a feature. Like I don't think it's a product, but in order to make life good and encourage more of these AI plugins, we need to have a better story for connecting to foreign interfaces like Node.js. And remote plugins v2 is the answer to that. Good Lord. I really wanted to talk about my deprecation strategy because I'll try to make it quick. Because this is important, and this is actually my main answer to the move fast topic. The giants have no timeouts. Some users don't like being bugged about deprecations. Some core devs don't get exhausted just by having to go through the deprecation phase, or to get a new API out the window, because the bar is higher. If we don't have a good deprecation strategy, then the bar for just getting a new API out is higher, because we're worried that deprecation is going to be painful. And then the opposite of that is that the opposite of that is also exhausting, where, you know, going through the deprecation cycle and doing it properly is exhausting. And so I just read an article like from Curl, and they seem to be in a happy space. They have not changed their ABI for 18 years. And we can kind of get to this place with our Lua API. It has worked well for our RPC API, where we have not changed what I call the ABI. It's the ABI because it's like, the API is more like it's something that the human is using when they autocomplete. The ABI is the thing that continues to work, no matter, like, it's future compatible, it's forward compatible. As long as that continues to work, then you have a stable ABI, so to speak. And I think that we can get a stable ABI at least for probably, just say, like 50% of the kind of things that we want to add to the standard lib, maybe more. But so let's just look at this matrix of like, what are actually the costs? All the high costs, the top 5, are things that we can eliminate by simply moving the code that we hate. We used to love it, now we hate it. We want to deprecate it. Just move it to a nuclear waste site somewhere in the code base. Remove the docs, remove the doc strings. It doesn't have auto completion or anything like that. But the ABI is still there, which means programmatically it still works. And this is like, this is very close to the best of both worlds. It's like we can almost have our cake and almost eat it too. So this is approximately what I propose for the Lua API contract. And this will be similar to the RPC API contract, which, again, I mentioned it worked out really well. Like, when we deprecate parts of the ABI, we put them in the API, we put them in the deprecated.c file. I never look at that thing ever again. I don't care that it's there. It adds milliseconds to the build time. The artifact size, it's mostly tiny. The docs are not there. It's not showing up in auto completion, and I never have to see anyone talking about it ever again. It's only there for ABI purposes, so that the existing programmatic consumers continue to work. That's a good trade-off, and it's what we need to do if we want to stay healthy and, like, maximally healthy. Yeah. So there's, right now we have soft deprecation stage, and we have a hard deprecation stage, and then in between that there's like this just like timeline. But what we would add with what I'm proposing is we just have the radioactive waste stage, where it's gone except the ABI still works. And these are some obvious kind of examples. Yeah, so So these are like, this is like the scopes or the layers of abstraction that are driving the project. Like in 2019, it was mostly about the green box here, technical architecture. And that's the happy little world that we lived in. But then as the project just is gaining momentum and energy and people, we can make a choice to either just continue living in the happy little world or to see how far we can go with actually channeling energy into useful directions and seeing what happens after that. And so that's where like project management comes in. And then today in 2024, now we're looking at another higher level of abstraction. We're kind of looking for signals from you know, what is the world telling us? What is the universe telling us? Thinking about how to like brain-computer interfaces, thinking about the architecture of other projects like VS Code and Zed, thinking about how we could maybe leverage Zig and things like that. Yeah, AI is, you know, it's an extra brain, and I'm excited about AI. So when I like, this is cool. I was writing this plugin for this slide stuff, and I put this into an AI. That's useful for like getting a function started, and that is why our documentation is important, and this is why we should think about attracting AI stuff. Last slide, mostly just because I have an audience. AI is not taking your jobs. Where are these things? You say that you're worried about taking your farming job or whatever. These things don't exist today. So where are they? Like, what AI has not given me this yet. I hope it does. We don't have a way to compile UI interactions to code. You can't round trip a UI. When you click a button, when you do something in your OS or whatever, that you can't then make that into a script. Because the operating system vendors failed at their jobs. They failed. Like, probably Smalltalk has this, I bet. So AI needs to give that to me. And then there's no like micro language that fits in a single file that's implemented in multiple languages. Why? Like, you should be, this is similar to the concept that Alan Kay talks about, where like when you send data, the interpreter for the data is part of like the header of the segment of the packet. It's interesting to think about. And then yeah, why is instrumentation not built into every language? Why are we using mocks? You should be testing logs instead of mocks. And finally, AI does not delete code. It only adds it, which means actually it could be worse. And this is that's the end of the talk. Here's a little picture of our branding team in Berlin. This is an advertisement that we put in the park.
TJ's controlling the stream. Hey. We actually fired Dak. Or, no, we didn't. We actually can't fire you.
He's the only one getting anything done.
You have to say we fired Adam. Hey, that was awesome.
Thank you.
there were several very funny comments.
Okay. I didn't
People
hear
love the
anybody
talk.
laughing. People were being quiet.
We were trying our hardest not to distract you because right now we have this microphone that's very obviously very sensitive. So like typing, they're going to clearly
Oh,
hear the typing.
yeah.
All that kind of stuff. So we tried our best to kind of give you the space. Yeah, I had to tell this guy to be quiet. He didn't even shower.
I hopped out of the shower.
He actually stopped his shower because everyone's like, shower.
Who's showering?
Yeah.
But that was, I love the AI part. I do love the deleting code part. I love that you said top 5 things and you highlighted 6. Just beautiful. Off by 1 errors were incredible. But this was really good.
Hey, stop making fun of me for giggling. He had funny lines. Okay, chat?
There were so many funny lines. My favorite one is that bro woke up and chose to mention everybody. Like instead of just like, oh, I'm gonna do violence against it's like everybody got hit with something like that.
Mine was Dunder saying, Justin started a sentence and then he never stopped.
It was great. That was
Oh, man.
it was so good.
All right, well, we probably should move on to the next section and we'll
Yeah.
start working on our next talks.
We have a lot of talks, so
Yeah. I tried to make it short.
It was great.
It was great.
At various points, because we're on front page, we had between 2,000 and 8,000 people hanging out. So it was good. They liked it.
Cool.
Check, can we get one more round of claps so Justin can see them?
Yep. Everybody, lots of claps. We appreciate that.
I'm looking forward to the talks.
Us too. All right, let's transition to our next talk. Video number 1 of B. Friedel talking about, I think, Unicode.
Yeah. B. Friedel. Does he introduce himself? Do we need to introduce him at all?
We'll see. If he doesn't introduce himself, we'll say it at the end.
Okay.